Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're gonna call this meeting to order, if we can. I am chair chairperson Willie Davis. We'll call this meeting to order. It's Human Relations Committee or meeting. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. And today is, help me with the date. First 13, I believe. First month, 13 days, 2022. And our time right now is, someone will help me with the time because I don't have a clock. What time is it exactly?
5:37 p.m.
At 5:37 p.m. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate that. If we could, I'd like to go ahead and get a roll call. If we could, I'm gonna ask Ms. Taylor if she would take a roll call so we can put that into record and see who all is here.
Yes, Chair Davis, thank you. Chair Davis,
Here.
Vice Chair McGregor will be joining us later. Commissioner Hood.
Present.
Commissioner Manzi.
Present.
Commissioner Barker. I think you're on mute, Commissioner Barker. Commissioner Gomez.
There she is.
Oh, she's joining us now.
Apologies, I'm here.
Thank you, Commissioner Barker. I have you. And we'll give Commissioner Gomez is here. Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Here.
And I think we're missing Commissioner Iqbal. It's absent. And I hand it back over to you, Chair Davis. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think we have joining us today is our Director, Jerron Hollister, and our Manager, Race McCray, and our liaison, Councilman Johnson, also, I think is in attendance today, I believe. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us. And I'd like to say, thank everyone for being here today. If we could, I'd like to go ahead and get started with, if you'd like to take a few minutes to look at our last minutes and get approval for our, what was December minutes, I believe it is. Our December minutes for the HRC. Has everyone read them, or anyone need a few minutes to look over them? Has everyone read the minutes?
Yep.
Does anyone need a few minutes to look over them?
I make a motion, we accept the minutes from the December 2021 meeting.
We have a motion from Ms. Gilbert on the floor. Can I get a second?
I second it.
Okay. Can we go ahead, Ms. Taylor, and get a roll call for approval of our minutes, December minutes?
Yes, Commissioner Davis, thank you. Commissioner Gilbert.
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Commissioner Gomez. I think is having technical issues. Commissioner Barker.
Aye.
Commissioner Manzi.
Aye.
Commissioner Hood.
Aye.
And I will note that Commissioner McGregor, Commissioner Iqbal are not present for the vote. Commissioner Gomez, can you hear me? And we will, so the vote passes by,
I don't think you called my name.
oh, Chair Davis, I apologize.
That's okay. Aye.
Thank you. So the vote passes by 6-0, and I hand it back over to you, Chair Davis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. One of the things, I hope I have this in order. Ms. Taylor gave me the work plan on paper, and I still left it in my pickup. I didn't bring it, so I hope I have this in order. I think our first thing we want to look at is our subcommittee. Is that correct? The next item on the agenda is our subcommittee, I believe. Mr.
So Chair Davis, the first thing is actually the 2022 work plan topic review and development. Because the subcommittees come out of that work plan topic review and may be influenced by. So I can just give a brief updates of where we are on the previous ones as a lead into this discussion. If that would be what you're looking for, Mr. Chair.
That would be fine. That would be fine.
Perfect. So as you all know, we last year had a number of items in our work plan that were completed. Just as a brief update, I'll start with fair housing because that's one of our ongoing work plan items that is largely out of the commission's orbit, but I just want to make sure that we stay on the ball on it. So we have been working throughout the fall. In August, after the end of the housing security workshops, the commission voted unanimously to ultimately recommend that we become a fair housing assistance program. And at that point, we as the staff
I still can't hear them.
we're developing. We can now hear you.
We heard you.
So we developed
Can
a
you hear me?
staff recommendation.
Yes.
Oh, you
that-
can? I can't hear anybody else. I don't know what's happening.
We developed a staff recommendation that we are going to be able to present to council. And one of the huge parts of that is also a development of a local ordinance, because part of that recommendation is if we are to become a fair housing assistance program, we would need to pass an ordinance to make that possible. So we've been working hard with that and have recently sent over a completed draft to HUD for preliminary review and are preparing that now for potential city council review.
This is Councilman Johnson. May I make a comment?
Go ahead, Councilman Johnson.
I would like to see this ordinance considered by council in February. How do we make that happen?
Well, this is Managing Director Hollis. Thank you, Councilman Johnson. I think as part of our process, as Manager McCray outlined, the completed draft of the ordinance that we have now will go to legal. And what we'll do is we will, as we send it over to them, we will also include the observation that you've made a request or desire for this to be heard in February. And so we'll take care of that instruction on our end. And then if there's any follow-up or clarification or question, we'll let you know immediately and pass that information on to the commission accordingly. Does that help?
That does. And actually, I can also send over an email as well, just to kind of make sure that the ball is continuing to roll. And hopefully will be presented to the entire council next month.
Okay, we'll note that as well. Thank you, Councilman Johnson.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
A question. If that happens, you'll make sure we all know when. Right.
Yes.
So we can be there.
Yeah, if this was if this goes before council, since this is a commission action or in response to a commission action, we would make sure to let all the commissioners know since it's directly related to your work. So we would send out an email, just kind of a standard, hey, this is appearing on the city council agenda on this date. Here's what it would look like. And we may be in touch with some of you to, help with the presentation itself. I know we've talked about that before. Since it's a recommendation, we might get further feedback on that portion of it.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we've also received some inquiries from some of the agencies and some of the participants in our information workshops, and so they're curious as well as far as when this will be heard. So in addition to the commission, we'll also be letting our stakeholders know that participated so they can see the next steps in the process unfold.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Sounds like we're still on track here, and we're still working hard to try to get this completed and done. So I do appreciate Mr. McCray and staff, all the work they're doing to get this done. And I also like to say thank you to Councilman Johnson for his help in trying to get this done also. So let's just hopefully we keep the ball rolling here, and eventually we will become an agency, a FAP agency. So,
Chair Davis.
yes, sir. Okay. Mr. I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Mr. McCray.
Sure. So that was the kind of biggest thing that's still rolling over. We also are still working on a tutoring program that we've talked about over the time. We have put that on hold briefly. The commission agreed to put that on hold while we're waiting for the ultimately for the COVID concerns to die down. Obviously, we're still in the middle of a incredibly significant wave in terms of just raw numbers of folks being hospitalized and raw numbers of tests coming back positive. So that is still on hold in terms of that being an in-person thing, because we established, the commission established that a crucial component of that was the in-person relationship building. So it was not just the delivery of information. So that is on hold temporarily. And we're just going to continue to watch where that will be. And then most recently in October, we developed a new work plan that addressed a couple other concerns. And so I want to just briefly check in with where those things are. The first, these are the items that we're going to be building on tonight and or developing new items. So I just want to set the kind of tone for that. So the first aspect of that was the establishing a human relations youth ambassador program. And that was established at our October retreat. Since then, we talked in our December meeting about making that an actual youth council. And so that became the revised work plan item that we established then. The second work plan item that we established at that time was explore increasing the availability of accessible dental care in High Point. Based on a December update that I gave last month, it seems like High Point University's new dental school will in a huge way address a lot of that concern. So we'll talk about what that means in terms of where we are today, but that probably is an item that will have very little work from the commission overall. And then the third one was facilitate the development of a summer youth basketball program. The inspiration for that was Midnight Basketball. And so that's still in its early stages and is probably a larger project. So that will, if you so choose, will likely continue on in the development of tonight's work plan. So those are the three that were established in October. And as I said, the dental care one might be something that is of lesser work required from the commission at this point. And then the youth council may, because it's no longer an ambassador program and it's now a youth council, that may require more work. So those are the kind of 2+1 that we have established from our previous work plan to work on potentially as 2022 issues. And then at that point, we're moving on into any new developments, new programs that you might like to establish. So that's where we are today in the work plan. That's kind of an update of just the current state of affairs. And I turn over to Chair Davis about how you want to develop that tonight.
With that youth ambassador, it's youth ambassador, correct? Is that what you said? Is that how we're gonna?
It initially
work?
was a youth ambassador program,
But
but then
youth.
and the idea was that we would have ambassadors come to sit in, like 1 or 2 students sit on the Human Relations Commission. We then got a request from city management that we explore the possibility of a youth council. So that kind of changed the nature of that scope for the commission.
Okay, youth council, that's the right how it's word. This is Chair Davis again. Have we come to any agreement or idea how we would be selecting our youth council? Or would it be from the high school, college, what age range we're looking for? Have we decided on that yet?
We haven't done any of that, I don't think.
This is Giselle. Back, long time ago, okay? I'm not telling you my age. I grew up in Miami and they had something similar for city council. And I participated in it. And it was the way that it was done down there. I'm not saying that this is the way we have to do it, but the way that it was done over there, it was open to high school. It was like 9 through 12. There was an application process that we needed to submit, but then there were 2 letters of recommendations that were needed from like teachers or like, mentors, whoever. And then we were allowed to serve for that school year. And then if you wanted to reapply, so it was like a yearly kind of thing, like you couldn't do it. I mean, you could do it more than one, but you had to reapply every year. And the application wasn't all that, I mean, from what I remember, like it wasn't super lengthy, but it was like, your usual information. And then there were like, I think we had either 2 or 3, like not hefty, like essay questions, but like enough that it was like, one was like, why would you like to be part of this council? What are your goals? And then like another one, it was something like on leadership or something like that. I can't remember. I'm sure if I dig through it, I can find one. But it wasn't, but it was pretty cool because we got to sit, in different, kind of like this, in different groups. And then we got to attend city council, but this was like a long time ago. So I think if we do something kind of similar, where it doesn't have to be super ultra complicated, but enough that, this is, if you want to do it, there's some commitment that you have to put.
I have a question. Along those same lines, if we open it up to high school, because that process seems pretty logical, is this something that these high school kids could get credit? Like would the high school look at, like you can do ROTC, you can do different things and get credit towards college. Is that a possibility that could be offered if we create this ambassador position, that these kids would participate and it would count towards something of their high school requirements for graduation and then towards college? Could we do that?
Mr. Chair, I think it sounds like there's some interest in the youth council idea. I think this is great, getting some of this feedback. And so I want to encourage the commissioners to keep asking questions and getting ideas. One of the components of this will be to reach out to the school system. This is a hybrid somewhat of a program that we had years ago of a Student Human Relations Commission, as we're describing it. But if we'll continue this dialogue, keep it going, and we can get some information. So if this is something that ends up having legs, we can take some conversations offline and come back with some recommendations that the commission can consider. But Commissioner Gomez, I don't know if I cut you off, but please continue.
No, that was the gist of my question.
I also have go ahead.
No, go.
Commissioner Gilbert. Okay. I had 2 questions. Well, to add on to what Commissioner Gomez said, maybe we can use it as volunteer hours as well.
Yeah,
a lot of students can use volunteer hours to go toward, future assignments or toward, possibly it could just be they just need the hours for something. 1 and 2, my question was, would we have an academic requirement as far as for the students to be able to be involved, such as do they need to have a specific GPA to be able to be involved, or is that something that we're considering?
When
Yep.
I did it, it wasn't like, I mean, if you want to be inclusive, I think it helps if you have a GPA, you know, it depends if you want it to be like a 2.5 or a 3.0. I think when I did it, it was like a 3.0 or something, because they want, you know, I know we're always looking at the smartest and brightest and everything, but you also want to grab like your average kind of thing, you know? So that's something that I think, I guess once we get closer, if this is something that comes into fruition, we can kind of figure out what are we looking for as a commission, to what kind of student we're looking for and how many students. And going back to like maybe allowing them to get credit in something, I think it'll be easier. Now this is from me in my past
Right.
life of being a teacher. I think it'll be easier for them to get hours, like volunteer hours, like this is part of their like their community
Service learning.
like their service learning hours. If we want them to get credit for something, that's something that we will have to talk to central office to, you know.
Well, let me interrupt. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
Go
I'm
ahead.
done.
This is Chair Davis. Let me say this, Mr. Hollis, help me out if I'm right or wrong. I think all these ideas are great, and all the, but as far as they're getting credit or getting a grade or anything for this, I really think that would be up to the school board or the school system, because it'd be great if they could, or it'd be great if we asked. But I think really, I don't think we would have to have the power to give them a grade or anything like that. I really don't think so. But I don't know. Like I said, we can ask. I'm willing to ask. But and I like your idea as far as the grade average. Your GPA average. I think it's a great idea. But you said a 3.0. I mean, how many kids are in? Me personally, I would like for every kid with a passing grade with at least well, I don't know how the grade system works now. Back when I was doing it, it was like an A, B, C, or D, L. Well, I'm gonna use my grading system for an example. When I would say anyone with a passing grade, at least or C plus or above, would be eligible, because if you a 3.0, isn't that almost like a straight A student, if I'm not mistaken? Or I
No,
could be
so if
wrong.
you're looking at a C plus, you're looking at a 2.8. 3.0, you're looking at a B student. It goes from 0 to 4. And on a regular scale, if you're looking at a C, if you want to do like just a straight 2.0, that's passing. Like that is, if you have a 1.9, you can't graduate. So if we're looking at like just enough to graduate, that's a 2.0. Simple. And that's a C, that's a solid C. Like,
Right.
and then if you want to do like a 2.5,
And I understand, and the reason I said that it was this right here. I wanted to make sure that everyone that was interested, I would, did have an opportunity, if they were really interested. I know I didn't want anyone saying that we were being unfair to another child for some particular reason. Now, I agree with if you were maybe with a felon, if you really are failing, maybe you should concentrate more on your schoolwork than if you were here on a committee. That I agree with. But that's why I was asking about the grade system, the grade system thing. That was my whole thinking. Anyone else want to piggyback on that?
Mr. Chair, I might be able to help out here.
Okay.
If you don't mind. So I did send out go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was telling Mr. Hood, right, hold on, Mr. Ray, Mr. Craig has the floor right now, please. Go ahead.
I was just going to say a lot of work plan development is two things. One would be establishing kind of our topics that we want to focus on. So if we so choose to, that this is a work plan project, which we previously would be carrying over from the work plan. So it makes sense. And clearly there's a lot of interest here. It seems like that would be step one. And then step two, which could also be done tonight, is kind of establishing just the plan for how to accomplish that. So all of these things are the things we're trying to accomplish, but it seems like tonight might be better spent with the actual effort of what that might look like. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I'm going to share my screen here. I sent out a document in the email, our weekly email. Well, Denise sent out a document in our weekly email that included a work plan template for developing these topics. And this is what that would look like. I've been trying to incorporate your comments as we go along, but I hope you all can see that. So we have here our recommended initiative. Initially, it was establish a human relations youth ambassador program. And then we revised it to establish a human relations youth council for high school students, potential timeline of identifying when this would be, potentially as early as March, determine how we would do eligibility, how many students we would need, role of the students on youth council and area of focus, how often they're meeting, explore requirements for service learning credits and volunteer hours. Also, maybe at that time, start developing a strategy for establishing working relationships with High Point area schools. And by summer 22, with staff partnerships, recruit our initial students to fill the youth council seats. So that kind of gives us the plan for how we might actually accomplish all these things that we're talking about. It seems like if people, if other commissioners have questions about how we might go about this, and things that could also be part of this timeline or other goals. I've also included some initial recommended success indicators. And while I'm doing this, I also want to give credit to Ms. Taylor, who was instrumental in helping develop this while we're doing a lot of busy tasks in our office. So we already have kind of what that success for this initiative would look like, which would be establishing those mission and guidelines, establishing the partnerships, recruiting them, holding our first meeting, and completing our initial initiative or program. Just as an example, this could be what we're looking for tonight. So we develop a topic, we develop how we're going to be doing it, and then that becomes the work plan for the rest of the year that we can discuss further.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think there was a comment in the chat by Commissioner Barker.
Okay.
And I don't know if she's, I don't want to speak for her. I don't know if she's available.
Hi, Gerard. Thank you.
Okay.
I think you covered it. I apologize. I have a horrible voice right now, so I may put a lot of my comments in the chat. But I think what Race just covered some of the stuff that I mentioned in my comments.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Barker. Mr. Chair, and I would say to reiterate what Manager McCray had mentioned, there are going to be some items that we discuss here that we use to kind of build on. One thing that we need to keep in mind as we're discussing this is scope. How many students will we end up having? What does that look like? We've got a lot of high schools. How many kids will we end up having participate? And there could be some value in some models I've seen in the past of letting the schools choose who they want. Maybe students choose who they want to represent them. And that way we're having a youth council with people that were selected by the students that they interact with. So there are a number of models, and we can get into some of that. That can be some of the reporting out we do to the commission, but just some things to keep in mind. There are lots of models out there, and the approach could be different depending on resources, what the school does, the hours, our objectives. So, but these are great ideas because I think this is going to take form in one fashion or another. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr.
Okay.
McCray, so question for you. Would this fall under creating a ad hoc subcommittee to sort of help manage this?
That's a great question. It could or could not. It's up to the commission. So if this was in the template that I'd shown, for example, the first item on the recommended timeline was establish how the youth council will function. So number of students, what the scope is, what the impact is, what's the mission, what are the roles, how often do they meet, things like that. That could be something that the commission as a whole says, this is what we're doing during our February meeting. We are going to be spending an hour as the commission as a whole talking about exactly that. And it doesn't therefore require a subcommittee. It would instead, if you said, well, I think that, this is something that's going to take 2 to 3 meetings to establish all of these things, and we'd like to have it done by March. We only have one other meeting and we've got other things to talk about in our February meeting. Let's create an ad hoc subcommittee to meet on, a couple different Wednesdays to develop this and report back. However you choose to do it is fine. It's a little bit about the availability of the commissioners and the determination, and also when we have developed this work plan document, what the expected workload is. Again, if you think, well, we want to have this done by March and it's going to take 4 hours, then we probably as a whole commission cannot do it.
So to add to that, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question, Commissioner Jones. I think that your suggestion may very well be where this ends up, at least for the establishment of it. So I think when we're done with this section of the discussion and staff comes back with some recommendations, that could be a part of it, that we set up an initial ad hoc committee to get this rolling, and that in conjunction with what staff is doing will help us kind of move this along. There are going to be some conversations that from the staff side that we have to have with Guilford County Schools, and there's going to be some things, but I do think this, for an initiative of this magnitude with all these moving pieces, it could very well end up in an ad hoc committee. But when we compile this, because it's just phase one, I mean, we'll hammer out these, much to Manager McCray's graphic that he had up earlier. I think we'll have some general guidelines that will give us marching orders moving forward, but that may very well be an outcome as we come back with staff recommendations.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is Chair Davis again. Well, excuse me. Go ahead, Ms. Jones. Did you have something you want to say?
No, I was just saying thanks for that information.
Oh, all right. Okay. Thank you. And again, thank you for the question. But this is Chair Davis again. So, to Mr. McCray, are you saying that we need to first decide what the topics or what it is that the youth council are going to be working on before we get a youth council?
No, it's establishing the topic. So tonight's discussion of the work plan is to establish what topics you as a commission will be addressing. I'm under the assumption that you are carrying forward 2 of your topics from two of your work plan items from our retreat in October. Those would be the establishment of a youth council. And then the second one would be the facilitating the development of a summer youth basketball program. Those were the 2 ones that were established in October. Unless the commission says we're done with those or we don't want to do them, I would assume that you're carrying those over. The third one was the development of the partnership with HPU to bring better dental care. I think that you're also likely carrying that over. I haven't heard any concerns from anyone about any of those 3 topics, but the HPU, the free dental care would likely be a lesser work item in terms of scope, in terms of workload. So you may say as a commission, these are the 2 items we want to do all year. And this is what we want to do, or at least until our next retreat in July. Or you could say, there's been a lot of concern about X, and I have and the commission has a concern about this or wants to develop something about this, and you develop a new topic that you're going to add to that work plan. Because this will determine what the agenda of our February, March, April, May, June meetings are, is the development of these topics. So if there is another concern, another program, another thing, that's what you're developing today. And things like the topics for the youth council, that can wait until we're actually digging into that item later on in the year.
Okay. All right. Well, again, this is Chair Davis. I'd like to open the floor for suggestions from the commission on how we would like to move forward right now. Anyone, any suggestions or comments?
This is Commissioner Gilbert. I think the youth council is a good idea. I would certainly say 2 representatives, maybe from each high school, and then they would bring with them issues that they deal with at their school or in their community. And so it would give us a cross section of the city or the county. I'm also the one that really spoke to the dental, so I'm going to kind of jump to that. And I am fine to say maybe that needs to just wait until we get HPU and their dental program on board, and then let's figure out how to partner well with them to provide dental resources. And so, that one does not have to be in the forefront as far as I'm concerned. I'm comfortable with it, kind of taking a back seat right now.
And I would agree with the dental program taking a back seat, when, like you said, until we can get High Point U on board completely. Moving forward with that, midnight basketball. Mr. McCrae, what did you say we were at with that? Or can we move forward with that, or is that, because that's going to be, are you on hold, so we're not going to be able to move forward with that right now? Is that correct?
You're talking about the midnight basketball.
Yes,
I think that would be if you're talking about in terms of COVID, that is something that I'm not able to speak to. I know that since we're talking about a program that would be 6 months out, a lot can change in that time frame. And also there's the potential that a sporting program like that would be outside, which would be generally considered a safer activity. That would be up to the commission if you want to pursue that. I know that the commissioner that developed that program and initially proposed it for consideration on the work plan was Commissioner McGregor, who I expect to join us later tonight, but she is not here as of right now. So I think that much like what happened with the tutoring program, I think that if the commission wanted to pursue this, you could do a lot of development and laying ground to make that program happen. Even if you chose to not ultimately launch it this summer, you could still lay the work to have it happen next summer, and you could still work on it throughout this year. That would be up to the commission about whether that's a priority.
This is
go ahead.
This is Commissioner Mancy. Gosh, I can't talk myself in third person. So weird. Anyway, this is Giselle. So I just have one observation, and I'm only bringing this up. I'm an educator at heart, so kids will always be in my heart first place. But I think something to also think about. This is just an observation. The 2 programs that we have on the forefront, whether it's the youth midnight basketball or the council, we're focusing a lot on the youth. Nothing wrong. I'm not opposed. I'm all about it. My question is there another pressing issue for the community that we represent that we need to maybe talk about or bring about or whatever? I'm not saying that we're starting from scratch again, but both plans are youth. And I don't know if that, and race, this is my first round, this is my first rodeo, so I don't know. Does that have an effect on our role? Is that our focus, or are we also like charged to kind of look at like, I know we have the housing project coming up. So that's a big one. But outside of that, if we focus on one or two projects, or we're doing two, or we're doing one, or whatever it is, they're both youth center, which I don't have a problem. I'm all about it. But that's just an observation.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I think to answer Commissioner Manzi's question. So what I think, based on previous work plans, and I think of a few of, I think Commissioner Barker, Commissioner Davis, you've been through a few of these. I think it's important that the group collectively decide whatever they are, if it's youth, if it's community, if it's housing, if it's a combination of them, that the things that we select are things where there's a level of commitment and passion where each of you want to get involved and get it done. In the past, we've had very long laundry lists of work plan items and have not been able, for a number of reasons, to get through those. So I think it's important to focus on I would like to do a few things very well and be average at 10 things. So after this meeting and we discuss the work plan, we should have a good sense from the commission of what items are important to you. Once we know those items that are important, then maybe we can pare that list down. But we probably need to be careful, I guess, at this phase, keeping the outcome of this meeting in mind. I think at least in the first round of conversations, we get everything out that's an important project or something that maybe we have missed or something we want to continue. And I think once we have that list where everyone's kind of weighed in, then we can kind of refine, okay, can we do that one next year? Okay, is this one that we want to work on immediately? Oh, hey, is the Housing Authority already doing that one? But I think at this point, so your question's a good one. I think if we can get out of the commission what things are important that we want to address, if there's some things that we haven't addressed, and then I think either in the next round or in subsequent conversations, maybe depending on how efficiently we do this, we can refine that list to something that we can all kind of wrap our arms around and decide a plan of attack.
I have a question. Piggybacking off of what Commissioner Manzi said about just focusing on the youth. Since we moved here, I mean, we're from Miami also, Giselle. We moved up here in 1995, and I always noticed that Winston and Kernersville always had huge outreaches and huge resources for the Spanish community. I've never really noticed that in High Point, and I don't know if that's ever been on the radar. I don't know if, High Point has the population of Hispanics that Winston, I mean, just by virtue of Winston and Kernersville, well, Winston being larger, I can understand, but I don't know if that's something that's ever been on the radar. But since we were talking about, what's important and what should we do, I at least wanted to throw that in there, that I haven't seen those kinds of resources in High Point that I have in Winston.
Great observation. I think for people outside, and this has been an education for those of us in the human relations field, I think for people outside of the Latinx community, there's a tendency to make sweeping generalizations about what the community needs are. And so we're always careful to defer to our agencies and our cultural groups that can give us the best perspective. One thing that we do have, and Giselle can speak to this from some of the work she's done, that's been around for a while through the YWCA, as a Latino Family Center. There are other initiatives. There are other things. High Point is a resettlement community. So we are, with our 120,000 or so in population, we are well represented by many cultural groups. And so your point is a good one. But to kind of refine that a little bit, Commissioner Gomez, is there a suggestion there as it relates to the commission that is some type of outreach initiative that you're wanting to see for our Latinx community, or can you give us a little bit more so we can get some direction on how we should proceed or how this discussion should proceed on this topic?
Well, I think that I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel. And I think that if, Winston and Kernersville, for example, there are things that they are doing. There might be some ideas that we can glean from them and tweak it to our area. I mean, there's a lot of people here that they don't, that if they don't speak English, perhaps they don't know, I don't know, financial planning. They don't know how to buy a house. They don't know, the nearest resources for, a special, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what they don't know until we get in there and find out what they don't know. But I think that things that we take for granted, something as simple as, oh, well, I'm going to call the Guilford County Tax Department to find out such and such about my property tax. And I think that those are things that we just take for granted because we know and we just do them. So in response to your question, Commissioner Hollis, I don't know what we need until I find out what they need, if that makes any sense.
I'll go ahead and jump in real quick. So I'm the director to the Latino Family Center here in High Point. And a lot of the things that you talked about, like we do a lot of seminars for fiscal literacy, real estate. We're about to launch VITA. And I work with the adults and the youth. And I have a team of me and one more person. For the longest time, it's just me. And so it's a little bit exhausting because I represent the population, and the needs are there's not just one need. We have like a whole spectrum, and so it's when people ask me what do you need, I'm like, do you have time to sit down and really talk about it, because it's extensive, and so granted, the organization that I work under, I can't compare to Charlotte or to Winston or to Raleigh, right? There's multiple agencies, and yes, and I actually look at them and I've spoken with them because they do things that I want to do in the future, but because I'm limited to staff, to resources, to money, to space, to X, Y, and Z. It's something that I envision that I want to get there to do what they're doing. But I'm an office of me and one more person. So I'm limited to how much I can do in the time that I have and in the help that I get. And so yes, we have needs. There are a lot of needs. I need a moment to sit down and really like go through it. Like, what would be one pressing need that, like, if we were to say, like, the commission, like, let us help you with this one area, right? Like, I wanted to make sure that it's the one that I'm like, man, if we were to, as a commission, address this, like, this will be a home run. Like, this will be like the best thing ever. And so, but we do have it, and I do help a lot of constituents, a lot of people that come in for that, for like, I need help with immigration, with taxes, with, child custody, with, I had an array of cases come in. And so, and every case is as different, and as, today I had a meeting and I tell them it's either really easy or the hardest thing I've ever encountered. I don't have like a medium. It's the two, the two extremes. And so I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of dreams and goals, but I'm limited in to how much I can do. So with that being said, yes, we do have something in High Point, and I'm the only one. I'm the only agency. And we serve High Point and Greater High Point. So that would be Archdale, Trinity included.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Morrison.
I think Commissioner
Well, this-
McGregor had her hand up.
Go ahead, Ms. McGregor.
Hi,
Ms.
how y'all,
McGregor.
how y'all doing? I'm sorry, I'm late. Speaking from the aspect, I have some friends who are educators, and a lot of them teach elementary school, and they say one of the greatest needs that they have is that the children are having to translate for the parents because the parents can't speak English. And I recall probably about 10 years ago, the company that I worked for, Mannington, we had a very diverse workforce. And so we actually started English speaking classes for those who could not speak English. Because what we found out in the plan is you go ask them a question, do you understand this? Yeah, but they really don't understand. And some of them couldn't even write their names.
Right.
So that's just one of the things that I've found with friends who are educators, that their children in elementary school have to translate to them.
Well, this is, I thank you. Are you done? Yeah. Anything else, Commissioner McGregor?
No.
Okay. I didn't want to interrupt you. That's why. So this is Chair Davis again. So I really appreciate everyone has great comments and great ideas. But I want to get back to what Mr. McCrae was saying. What is it that we want to focus on? Or do we want to focus on what we have already established? Or do we want to add something different? Because everyone has come up with great ideas, great comments. And like like our director was saying, let's focus on something that we all have a passion with and about, so we can all try to make it good and great. So, anyone have any suggestions that what I would like? Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think you're spot on. I think let's make sure and if Denise, if you can recap the topics that we've discussed so far, so we know where we are, and check with the group to see if there are any other areas that we want to put on the sort of first run list. I mean, in years past, we do these things in person, and we'd have a poster board all over the room, and we're checking boxes and circling. So right now, this is brainstorming, and I think we'll be able to refine, but I want to make sure that everyone has had a chance to present ideas or present something for consideration. And then when we've exhausted that, then I think it would be good to go back and say, all right, we've had 4 initiatives that deal with youth. Can we pick one of these? Or I think that would be helpful. So I do think we need to focus the conversation on what we want to do, but I think we need to do that after if everyone hasn't, after everyone's kind of spoken up about what they would like to see, if there's something that hasn't been mentioned. So Denise, if you can kind of recap the things that we've discussed so far, and then if there are folks here who have some additional considerations that we add to that list, and then I think we can get to where Mr. Chair and Manager McCrae have talked about in the last 20-30 minutes. Is everybody in agreement on that?
Yep.
Denise?
Yes.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So the first thing we've gone over is regarding the youth council or the youth ambassador. Okay, I apologize. Thank you for that. The first thing we've gone over is the youth council, which was initially the youth ambassador program. We will put a pin in maybe setting up an initial ad hoc committee to go over the particulars on that. Secondly is the midnight basketball. We will develop laying ground to maybe have the program happen next year, but we have a pin in that as well. For the dental program, we will wait until we speak to the HPU Dean of the School of Dental before we move forward on that. We have discussed having something set up as far as Spanish community outreach, and a few ideas were thrown out regarding that. Giselle did mention in the chat, or excuse me, Commissioner Manzi did mention in the chat that the YWCA has ESL, English as a second language classes. So that may be something to consider. Commissioner Gomez did mention that Winston-Salem and Kernersville have models in place. So maybe we can connect with them to figure out what might work for High Point. And I apologize if I missed anything at this point. I'll hand it back over to you, Manager Hollis.
Yeah, and I'll toss it over back to Race. Race, if we can work through other ideas that we need to consider before we refine. I think that'll help move things along.
Excuse me, 1 second, if you don't mind. This is Chair Dave. Did Mr. Hood, did I see his hand raised? I cannot tell. Did Commissioner Hood have his hand raised?
I did
put comments in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I did put
Okay.
something in the chat in regards to an interest that I have.
Please go ahead.
Sure. So my interest is essentially just bridging the gap between community and law enforcement. I think that that's very important, that everybody has some form of understanding. My idea is, to maybe create a forum or an open dialogue where you can have maybe law enforcement and the community come together within a room to talk about different experiences.
Excuse me, Commissioner Hood, can you get closer to your microphone? At least on mine, I'm getting every other word. I don't know if you have us on speaker. We're missing some of your.
I'm sorry. I had my
we don't want to miss
earbuds in.
anything.
Can you hear me better?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, awesome. I'm sorry. I had my earbuds in. I'm in the car. But I was saying, essentially, I think it would be really good interest to create a forum where we can bring law enforcement to discuss experiences within the community, to give people a voice, both law enforcement and both the community, to allow people to be able to feel like they're being heard. Also, to bridge the gap between volunteer opportunities within the community where we can get law enforcement involved in doing, multiple activities within the community to help build rapport. I think that that's definitely important. And it's my suggestion, something that I'm extremely interested in.
Okay. I really appreciate that. Mr. Hood. Anyone else? Because I really think that's a great idea also. It's something I would be interested in. Anyone else have any comments? If not, I'm going to go ahead.
This is Commissioner Gilbert. I hope we don't let go of affordable, decent housing. I think we've done the work with fair housing and the ordinance is coming, but affordable housing that is decent is very, very difficult to locate here in High Point. And the other, and I don't know if you saw the news today, Guilford County has tripled percent-wise of opioid overdoses and deaths in the last year. I just raised that as an issue that seems to be widespread. And, we haven't even talked about that kind of stuff, but it's there, and the statistics are pointing that High Point wasn't as high as Greensboro, but the deaths are happening from overdoses. And so that's, all ages in our city.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner Gilbert. Anyone else have a comment or you'd like to make? Or if not, I would like to turn it back over to our manager, Mr. McCray. But anyone else?
I'm happy for anyone else to further more on these topic developments, but I'm going to quickly share my screen just to show you where we stand with these, because I've been taking notes so that you can see these topics as we have generated them. If people want to continue to generate topics, that sounds great, but I just want to show you what we have. So
Okay, you still there, Mr. McCray?
Yep, I was just seeing if anyone had any reactions to what we have, or if any of the commissioners wanted to move for any other things to be added to this list of potential topics.
Okay. This is Commissioner Gilbert. Okay, I have a question. So let's look at this list. If you look at the list, there are, I don't know how to say this. There are issue-driven topics, and then there are very particular specific topics. I would come back to all of us to say, perhaps, is our role to run a specific program, or is our role really to help focus and help the community in some of the larger issues that are affecting either the whole community or parts of the High Point community? And I don't know the answer, and I like the idea of the youth council, but let's look at that carefully, because it will take a lot of work on our part to make that happen, and then to make sure those young people have some sort of good experience. I mean, what are we expecting from them? That they aren't going to feel like they're just spinning their wheel and nothing is happening. So overall, that's a comment just looking at the list.
Well, and that's a great question to go back to history. I believe in the 60s, Manager McCray, when our original Human Relations Commission was created, one of the things that was a part of the mission was to create things to do, alternatives for youth. I think that's in some of the original language in the ordinance. But that was 2 generations ago. So I think the answer to your question is yes. I mean, there are spaces where we've operated in where we have put in very specific programs, done very, very specific things. And then there are places where the commission over the years has tried to lend its energy and effort to things that were more global in scope. I think what I've always tried to encourage with the commissions are to, one, find areas where you personally have interest, so you're going to actually work in it. 2 would be, how do we take a list like this and see what's already being done? And I think Commissioner Gomez made a comment earlier about reinventing the wheel. I mean, if we have an entire department, for example, not to pick on anyone, we have an entire department in community development that works on affordable, decent housing, and they're building affordable housing as we speak. So I think there are ways that we can make sure that we're plugging in, and if it's something that's already working and we want to offer another set of hands to plug into something that's already going on, that's one thing. But then there's some spaces where we find that it's inadequate, where there aren't things that are there. I mean, there are millions of dollars and millions of and hundreds of conversations every year about opioid overdoses and deaths. I mean, that's something that's out in the community. So the question for a commission is, where can we uniquely get involved where we're not being redundant, we're making a difference, or we're putting something in place that's going to make a difference in a space where we can operate uniquely. So I think as we look at these, as we look at these lists, some things are easier to do than other things. Some things are already being done. So as we look at this list, I have not seen a successful work plan with, what is this, 7 items in a 6-month period that were done effectively. So keeping that in mind, I would say our target would be no more than 3, actually, that we could actually expect to get something done and be able to show progress. I don't know if that helps or that answers your question, but that's usually where we find ourselves on these work plans.
Well, okay, even 1 or 2. I mean, it feels overwhelming to me to look at all of those because we certainly can't tackle them all at one time.
I have, this is
Go ahead.
Commissioner Mancy. I think all the ideas are great. Sorry, I'm getting caught up in I have like 20 things like running into my tongue and like I want to say them all at the same time. So I just want to address just a few of these and kind of like what you were saying, Mr. Hollis, Jerron. I can't speak today. So like for the bigger issues, like the opioid overdoses and death and all that, like, you know, kind of like what you said, like that, I feel like that's been a trend for the last few years. And I don't know how we as a commission can, I'm not saying that we don't have the power to make a difference. We will have to really narrow down and come up with something specific that addresses that, right? A program, something, blah, blah. To talk on affordable, decent housing, I mean, there's an issue that I can talk about for like hours. And I feel like that has been like same thing, kind of like year by year, and there's multiple conversations. And I deal with the immigrant side of it. If you guys will see the amount of hoops that I have to jump only to get like my door shut 20,000 times because they don't even qualify for affordable housing. Like that's the topic that like I would like to like die on a hill over there, but you know that's bigger than me. The bridging the gap between the community and law enforcement, like having the forum, the dialogue, and all that. I know like there's a group right now that they're having those conversations, and then having the involvement of law enforcement in the community. You know, Petula and I forget her partners. You know, they're doing a lot of the community engagement, and they're fabulous too. You know, that's a conversation that we can also like reach out, and if it's something that we want to tackle. With the Latinx community, if we were to focus on something like that, I wouldn't necessarily focus on language learning. I will probably pick another route. But that's, you know, I guess the language learning, it's kind of like an idea and kind of piggybacking on what Commissioner McGregor kind of said earlier. Yeah, like that's the #1 issue. Like it's you know, like the language barrier, or sometimes even just reading and writing, right? And even when I was a teacher, I was interpreting for everybody and their mom. So it's exhausting. But the good thing is that Guilford County does have interpreters. Some of them, you know, in the schools that have a high population, they have them in the schools. Granted, they're also being told to do many different things. So, you know, there is a strain over there as well. And then going back to youth council and midnight basketball, the one thing to talk about, and I kind of go back to the youth council, and I'm saying that we don't have to do this, but I do see a few benefits from there. You know, we talk about, and I'm not saying that this is what we have to do, because everything has something good about it. But when we talk about our high school kids, you know, and I sat in a panel where we were talking about youth violence. Lately, the violence that has been happening in High Point with like the drive-by shootings and this and that. And I don't know if you guys have been watching the news, but I sat in a panel with the chief and multiple other organizations where they addressed this, right? Like we had a whole 2-hour conversation about what our communities, partners, organizations are they doing for the youth, right? Because they're finding that the crime is rising. I'm not saying that the youth council is gonna fix it. However, I see a potentially good outcome from there, because I don't know who was it. We can get straight from the students, what are the needs, what are they saying, what are they seeing in their communities, in their school. And you know, it's almost like their ears and eyes on their concerns, right? Then not only that, they're being exposed to, you know, our democracy, right? They're being exposed to, you know, there are people that are actually talking about things in the community and why it's important or not important, or, you know, or they're talking about things that they really don't pertain to me, but how can I change that, right? I've seen with my kids, my students that I work with, my youth, when we do advocacy work, when their eyes are open, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was happening, right? So the youth council, there's some potential great benefits going on with midnight basketball. I love it, but we have to think about that. That's coming up in 6 months, literally.
Yeah.
And so that'll be like that's going to be a fast moving planning session. And if we only meet once a month or every other month, or we have a subcommittee or whatever, that is still like, I run a summer camp for my program, and I already started planning last year. And so we're kind of a little bit behind in that sense. But I think we have to, I kind of agree, we need to pick like either 2 or 3, but then be intentional, kind of narrow down. It doesn't matter where we go. If we go to the opioid, if we go to decent housing, if we go to, you know, law enforcement and community, let's just be intentional and like narrow down what is it that we want to do, because we have big ideas or big themes, but how can we as a commission, as a group, actually make a difference or make some, you know, movement in the needle of going, you know, whatever the issue is, going the right way.
Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead. The floor is yours, Mr. McCray.
Sure. So thank you, Commissioner Menzie. You know, maybe at this point, I don't want to step on your toes, Chair Davis, but I'm wondering, it sounds like we've maybe reached the end of topic generation is what I'm hearing, and that maybe I'm hearing already some commissioners wanting to just, you know, kind of narrow this down to say the 3 topics that we want to focus on for our work plan and set those. The only thing I'd add for Commissioner Manzie's point is that, you know, all of these are viable. They would just depend on what they are. So, you know, outreach to Latinx community, for example, is a broad topic, just like the opioid overdoses and deaths. But I know that we have 2, you know, folks who you know, both Commissioner Gomez and Commissioner Manzie, who talked about that specifically to say, yes, this is a broad topic, but the 2 of you would be able to bring, you know, information and resources and expertise that you have, that we would be able to narrow that down in a future meeting. So just because it's broad doesn't mean that what would actually be chosen by the commission wouldn't be something narrower. What would actually be selected wouldn't be something narrower. But I do think it might be time to just, you know, maybe, I don't know if it would be best to use the chat function or something like that, where we could just kind of say, these are the top 3 things I'm looking at, something like that. Would that be in line with what you're hoping to accomplish, Chair Davis?
It is. That's why I was asking. I wanted everyone to give everyone an opportunity to voice their opinions and ideas before we came down. But again, as our director was saying, we need to make sure we can be good at whatever we do. So let's not overload ourselves. I mean, like, and as you said, these are all great ideas. I am really amazed, and I really do appreciate this committee for all of their comments and ideas. I mean, they all are great. But I think we do need to move forward with what it is that we want to put in our work plan, and start focusing on that. I know I really like me personally, I like all of them, but I was really interested in the bridging the gap with the community and law enforcement, because I think, or at least open a dialogue, because I look at a lot of these things. that we may be able to combine in some type of way, you know, with our young people, with the youth council, you know, the youth council and bridging the gap with law enforcement. We're always talking about, especially our young adults, you know. So I think all those are great. I think we're all interested in the youth council, but we also need to come up with an idea on how it's going to look. So I think now, if any, maybe that's what we need to vote, or do we need to decide tonight? Is my question to you, Mr. McCray. Do we need to decide tonight is which one of these three topics we're going to focus on?
That would be the ideal, since the development of the work plan is typically done in the retreat. So yes, the ideal would be to leave tonight with, you know, for example, 3 topics that we're going to focus on for the next 6 months. And I also want to note, when we revisit this at our next retreat in July, I can bring back these exact suggestions so that even if something is not chosen tonight, it can be still something that the commission revisits at a later date.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, it may be an idea then that now that everyone can see the listed topics, that in your chat function on your computer, just put your top 3 or top 4, and then we can see from overlap, we can tally those and see which ones have the support of the commission as the next topics to discuss, to kind of refine this list.
Okay. I heard most of what you said. You were saying something about put it on our computer. You say we can vote on our computer. Is that what you were saying? I didn't understand that part. I'm sorry.
I was saying on your screens, you've got a drop down where you can add chat. You can make comments. So
Okay.
in that area where you make comments, if you can just briefly list the 3, I don't know if you want to say 3 or 4, it's your top 3 that you would want to support individually. So if you can go in now and just enter those in, we can look at those and we can see which ones have the most support, and we will essentially create our list from that.
Okay. That's great. So let's do that. If everyone's in agreement with that, won't we just go ahead now? Whatever 3 is most interesting to you guys, to you ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry for saying guys. To the commission, whatever is more interesting to the commission, just go ahead as our director was saying, and and put it in the chat, what you like most, and we'll move forward from there. That was a great idea. I thank you. Let me start this over because I completely misspelled that.
And I have already recorded votes for Commissioner McGregor, Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Gilbert, Commissioner Hood, and Commissioner Barker. Those are the ones I saw in the chat already. So I think we're missing Commissioner Manzi, Commissioner Jones, and Commissioner Davis. Oh, wait, no, I got Commissioner Jones, sorry. Commissioner Manzi and Commissioner Davis.
Is anybody having any technical difficulties?
We could also just have anyone who's, and I also don't see Commissioner Gomez. If anyone's having difficulties, they are welcome to just voice vote, essentially. We could we could have anyone kind of repeat what they're saying or trying to type.
Yeah, I think mine was a direct reply to Commissioner Hood. That's why you can't see it.
Excellent.
So I'll go back.
Yeah, sometimes the chat function does auto reply to the last person as a personal message. So, okay, I see Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Manzi. And Commissioner Gomez is entering hers right now. Okay, that includes Chair Davis, Commissioner Manzi, and Commissioner Gomez. I believe that that's all the recorded votes. So as you can see, the votes kind of topic areas that we wanted to focus on were bridging the gap between community and law enforcement, outreach to the Latinx community, and the Youth Council. And so just to kind of look at that, let me quickly bring that up. I already showed you a potential draft of the Youth Council. Let me show you what that looks like. I'll switch over to that screen. So that was what I showed you earlier. Does this, just so we can kind of establish what this kind of program would look like, and then we can do the same thing for the other two if we would like. But it would be, we have a kind of a initiative that we're pursuing, in this case, establish a Human Relations Youth Council for high school students. Our timeline is by our March meeting, determine how the Youth Council will function as it safely navigates COVID-19, including some of the criteria we mentioned earlier, such as how many students will be involved, what is the scope and impact, what are the eligibility guidelines, including GPA, applications, or staff recommendations, role of the students on the Youth Council and their areas of focus, meeting frequency, and exploring the requirements for service learning credits or volunteer hours. That would also include developing a strategy for establishing working relationships with High Point area high schools, so we can kind of look how we can partner with staff at those schools. And then by the summer 2022, kind of, I don't have a specific deadline there yet, with staff partnerships, recruit the initial students to fill the Youth Council seats. And that I left that a little vague simply because that may be at the determination of the staff recommendation. Is this something where students would want to work over the school or over the summer, or should we wait for that actual recruitment until the beginning of next school year? So that's kind of why I left it as summer instead of a hard deadline. Does that seem like a good timeline for folks?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. And I had these kind of recommended success indicators. Development of a Youth Council mission and guidelines would be one success indicator, an establishment of partnerships with key staff members, beginning student recruitment, the first Youth Council meeting being held, and the first Youth Council program or initiative that is completed. And those would kind of recognize when we are completed, when we have completed this initiative. The second or the fourth thing on this list is to identify the resources needed for this initiative to be successful. I wasn't sure if anyone had suggestions of resources of things that they think we will need to make this happen.
I would say some kind of training about what I mean, maybe even some of that training that was done for us that may be too involved. I don't know, but some sort of training.
Training
that
or
would,
application, something that
I mean,
like an initial one. Well, you'll need an application process, but and then do like
Yeah.
your training / orientation to the group.
So this
yeah,
would be
some
for the
sort of
students.
group process, group learning or something like that.
But would that be under guidelines or so? Hold on, Race, are you looking at resources as an actual like, you know, things that we need,
As
or are
opposed-
we looking at resources in terms of?
This would be, what are the resources the commission needs to complete their goal? So this could be, for example, inviting a speaker. It could be, hiring a professional to do some kind of work for us. It could be throwing a picnic. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thing that is intended by resources. What I'm hearing though from you all is that you think that that this council should have some kind of training. So perhaps one of the success indicators is establishing a training for the students.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to do something as they begin, whether that's a picnic or a kickoff or something, introducing them to each other and just sort of kick it off. But I don't know that it has to be elaborate.
Yeah.
I would think you would build a notebook for them or something, so that they would have something specific that when they know they're meeting, they can go to and pull, I don't know.
Yeah, not only that, but then I think it would be good. I don't know if this will be as a resource, but like, I think it would be cool for them to go into the city council chamber. I don't want to call it a chamber. I don't know what it's called, the room. And either have them tour and see it, obviously if COVID is, allows it. But I don't know if that will be, but yeah, I agree with Commissioner Gover doing kind of like, if the first one would be like a good kickoff, if we can have it in person, having, I guess, some snacks or whatnot. But I would say like we will need, in terms of resources, we, I don't know, is a person a resource? Because we will have to talk to.
Resource. Yeah,
Okay.
if I may, I think these are some good ideas, and I think those resources on all of these work plan initiatives, the ones that we've selected, and I see Commissioner Hood has his hand raised. In all these, there's going to be an element of staff working on this behind the scenes. So I don't want the commission to think that all of these steps and all the completion is going to be on your shoulders only. But I think one important piece that we like to do is best practices. So from a resource standpoint, or wherever you want to put it, I think there's some space to look at existing youth councils that we have in the area, so that to go back to Commissioner Gomez, so that we're not reinventing the wheel. So there are successful youth councils that are out there. Let's pull those best practices, and that might even look like someone coming in and giving us a presentation of what they did, how it works. That might also look like somebody from Guilford County Schools getting involved and addressing the needs that would make their youth council in our area, what would make it the same or different as in some other areas. So those are just some things to consider, but I think we're on the right track with that. I think Commissioner Hood and then Commissioner Gomez had their hands raised, so please. Commissioner Hood.
Okay. I don't want to jump the gun. But for further clarity, is our primary objective to sculpt and train the youth council to understand the primary objectives of the Human Relations Commission and how to get involved, because I feel like us coming together and creating this forum is for us to be able to sculpt the direction of the resources that we need. I think we need to further understand what our objective is with the youth council. So are we sculpting them to be the next up? Are we sculpting them to understand what goes into being a part of the Human Relations Commission? Because I think if we have more of an understanding, then we can come a little bit closer to the resources that we need to be successful.
I think that's a good point. So from in our timeline and our steps, maybe further refining the objectives and the goals. A lot of times what you see in the youth council is it's partnerships. You have a voice for youth to learn how to solve civic challenges or engage with other civic leaders. So I think by establishing the scope of what we're trying to get them to do, to your point, Commissioner Hood, that would help us figure out some of those other steps. So the establishment of what we want it to look like and what's possible based on the partnerships with our high schools here in High Point is probably something that will be in the early steps of the process on the timeline.
You say someone else had the hand raised?
Yeah, that was me. My question was similar to Commissioner Hood's. I guess my question was, are we, like he said, are we training them to be part of the Human Relations Commission? Are they shadowing us? Are they going to participate in meetings and give input? Like, hey, I have an idea. Or are there other commissions, like this student here is going to major in business in college, and there's some kind of business commission? Is this, high school student going to be majoring in, I don't know, sociology or something, and so they're participating in some other commission that addresses some other need in the community? So I think my Commissioner Hood hit the question right on the nail on the head. I just wanted to voice a couple of different things that I was thinking in my head of how I was phrasing the questions.
And I'll just say thank you for both of you both the commissioners' input. I added determine specific goals and objectives of the youth council as one of the first priorities. So that can kind of help us narrow in on that. It's not weighing in on what that should look like just yet, but we as the commission can debate it. Is there anything else to, go ahead.
Excuse me, I think we were saying the same thing. I was asking, was there any more comments from the commission?
This is Karen Gilbert. I would also say, don't some of us need to, I don't know what the word is. I mean, manage, mentor, coach, guide, whatever word, but to be a part of this group. I mean, we're bringing them together to try to have an experience of what, let's say, city government, what some of the parts of city government are. But they're just not out there on their own. They do come under us. Not that they have to shadow me, but that we shadow them in their meetings and stuff like that, right?
I think typically there is some of that, but I think a youth council, one of the things that it focuses on is bringing a perspective where they're actually bringing issues. They're actually a voice. This is what's going on. This is what we see, to kind of piggyback on some earlier conversations, because there could be some overlap on some other things. I mean, what things are important? What civic challenges do they have? How do those things overlap? But with something that's so broad, I think the questions here are good. If there are other questions specifically about the youth council, I think what we can do as staff is come back with some examples and some models as a result of some research, and then that will help the commission decide what road you would like to collectively go down. But but I think it's a blank slate right now, and we could make it look like whatever we wanted to. We do have some boundaries of availability, what the schools, what kind of partnership that would look like. So there's some research that we have to do in the background. And as much as I would like to get this all nailed down tonight, I don't think we're going to be able to shape it fully in scope. But I think we've got enough information here where we can come back to bring some recommendations or some examples that will be helpful, so we can kind of shape what the what part is that we're doing. This is a really good start, but I think we'll need to do some research in the background and be able to come back with some starting point recommendations for future consideration.
Well, and
Chair, go ahead, Ms. Gilbert.
I just wonder if a couple of us shouldn't think even now about one of these three, and whether we meet with race, between now and our next meeting, and flesh out some of these. Some of these don't need to come to the whole group. And then the whole group could respond. And if they wanted to change it, they could. But maybe we each one take one or something and work outside of our meeting time to help narrow the whole form template down.
Well, I was speaking specifically about the Youth Council, Commissioner Gilbert, but I think this might be, Mr. Chair, an opportunity. I think Commissioner Jones had mentioned an ad hoc group on one of the topics. This might be the time to get some volunteers for that, so that we can help with some of that reporting out and next steps, with the understanding that there will probably be some non-commission meeting time emails and conversations that come along with that. I know how we love using our free time in that way, but that's one of the realities of an ad hoc group. So, Mr. Chair, there might be some space to find out if there are 2 or 3 folks that want to be a part of this.
And we could do it at the end. It doesn't have to be done right now, but I mean, that would move us forward a little bit.
I would open it. This is Chair David. I would like to open the floor to everyone if they would like to volunteer their time to a specific item. I think right now,
Mr. Chair, I think we had a question from Commissioner McGregor.
Okay.
Comment.
Go ahead, Ms. McGregor. I'm sorry, did not see it.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you. But I was looking over the list for the Youth Council, and one of the items kind of stood out to me was the service learning, volunteer hours, and all that's all through Gifford County Schools. And that in itself, that particular project in itself takes a lot of work. My son did it when he was at Ragsdale, and they typically like them to start when they're sophomores in high school, because they have to partner up. They have to find places to partner up, and maybe that's where the Youth Council gets involved, where they can volunteer their hours. But that's a big project. I don't know who brought that up, but I remember just looking at those things. I mean, there's a lot of time involved in each one of these items.
And I think that's a good example of like something we could bring an educator to come to address that at a future meeting. Because since I know at least I am in the dark on what that would require. So that might be something that we could do that. If I'm understanding the conversation so far, it seems like this is a recommended initiative. We're happy with the timeline. We're getting into details. So maybe we should just move on to the establishing a similar protocol for our second initiative, which was bridging the law enforcement and public.
Well, Manager McCraft, I think you're right, but I do think either at the end or while this topic is still hot, maybe we get that ad hoc group And in the meantime, they could, as just homework, look at some other youth councils and have some refined scope and just have an idea to be knowledgeable of the topic. But maybe while we're still on the youth council, maybe we go ahead and get those volunteers, not in stone. If you feel tonight that you want to volunteer, you might change your mind after you go to sleep tonight, but maybe we get some names of what we have started. And then when we have those names, that will give us a list for a future conversation after the meeting. And then we can do something similar if necessary for those other topics. Mr. Chair, is that something that you'd be comfortable with?
That's great. Great idea. And as I was saying earlier, the floor is still open for the commissioners that would like to volunteer on the youth council program. So do we have any volunteer for this ad hoc?
I'd be interested in the youth council.
Yeah, I just said the same thing.
Okay.
And I'll note that Commissioner Barker also volunteered, as did Commissioner Hood. They were both in the chat, and Commissioner Barker unfortunately had to leave the call early. So she will not be joining us for the rest of the meeting.
Okay, so we have Commissioner Barker, we have Commissioner Hood, and we have Commissioner McGregor, and we have one other person.
Gilbert.
Gilbert, and we also Commissioner Mancy, right?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Okay, that may be too many, but right.
Oh, so so when would you guys like to get together? Well, let's go back to Commissioner. Let's go back to what Mr. McCray was saying. You said you had maybe too many, Mr. McCray?
No,
that was Commissioner Gilbert. So
that was
we have the names of people that showed interest. From the staff standpoint, let us work on next steps of refining and as far as times and such. Let's do that directly so that we don't spend too much time on this item, because there's some other things. But we can work through the size of the group and meeting, and maybe the meeting times will help pare down the list of who can actually participate depending on times at work or what have you. So with those names, I think we have enough to start with. And if we need to do something else or we run out of ad hoc group volunteers, we can always come back. But I think we have enough, Mr. Chair, to move forward with additional conversation about the committee if that is the will of the group.
That's great. So can we move forward with the next item, which I think Mr. McCray was saying was, I think it was law, bridging the gap with law enforcement, I believe it was. Is that correct, Mr. McCray?
Yes, and so if anyone has a kind of recommended items that we need to kind of complete here, so maybe coming, so we can start with the kind of the brainstorming of a timeline.
So let's go ahead.
I mean, the idea I think that was presented was that it would be to provide some opportunities for law enforcement and community members to come together for conversation. Right?
Yeah, so it was to create a forum or an opportunity for dialogue between the community and for law enforcement, and also to create more opportunities for law enforcement to get involved in community activities.
This is Commissioner Mancy raised, well, actually, Giovanni, are you, just to kind of like narrow down the scope of having these conversations, are you picturing or envisioning this as forums, as workshops, as, you know, a community engagement where, you know, we're having, you know, I don't know, we can call it, you know, don't know, whatever, we can have a fancy name on it. Are we looking at something like that where we're having these conversations, or is this an ongoing, like, we want to meet with HPPD every other month on X, Y, and Z topics? How are you envisioning?
Yes. So how I'm thinking of it is initially making that connection with PD and creating that dialogue where we're creating opportunities for us to be able to meet, where we may have a meeting room or we may have a space where we can all meet and have certain representatives of the HPPD come to discuss, but also have it as an open forum where we can have something where we can share to the public for them to also know exactly what's going on, or the opportunity for them to be able to come out and speak. Also, I love the idea of events for community engagement. So that would include us brainstorming on and getting into the community to understand different needs, what's really important within the community, and presenting these opportunities back to HPPD to create the opportunity for them to be able to get involved in these different opportunities. So essentially bridging that gap, because they're not always out in the community to hear and to directly be engaged. So if we're able to be that liaison between the two, I think that would be our role.
This is Commission. This is Chair Davis. I got a question for you, Mr. McCray. In our last meeting, I think we came up. It was mentioned something about. Help me with the wording. Maybe coming up with a new subcommittee or something that involved. What was it we were calling it? That did involve the police and citizens.
Oh.
What was that?
Yeah. One of the standing committees, I think,
Right.
is what we were talking about. That there'd be a standing committee that had, as part of its function, police community engagement. I believe. Is that right, Denise?
I think you're right.
Yes, and I believe it was something along the lines of human rights where that came up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we can just could that also fall if we did that, could that also fall up under that umbrella?
It was social justice.
Yes, that's right. It was a social. There was a suggestion by I can't remember which commissioner, but there was a suggestion where there'll be a standing committee, standing social justice committee. If we had a standing social justice committee, this would be an example of something that fell under that category, under that purview of that committee. These might be two different conversations, but if we did have that, yes, this would go there. But I think to the point of the particular issue that we're talking about now, even if we didn't have that as a subcommittee, I think the approach to this would have to be similar to the last. Maybe something for the commission to consider is finding out what's out there, finding out what the police, what they're already doing. Because what you don't want to have is, you don't want to have a situation where we spend a lot of time making suggestions about things without knowledge of things that are already going on. And so it can appear redundant. And then what we could do at that point is have once the commission is clear about, what they want to move, how they want to move forward, then we can have the police explain where they see gaps, where they see needs, and then overlap that with areas where the commission might see opportunities for dialogue, and then match those up with some of the things that are already out there. I know that the police department has several outreach programs which they're currently involved, but that doesn't stop this group from trying to work through those and figure out what areas, if any, need additional discussion. So as far as the timeline, I would see someplace early in this timeline talking to the police and seeing what they have, so that we know where where we need to focus, or if there are areas where we need to focus where there isn't anything in that space.
Okay. Go ahead.
This is
Go ahead,
Commissioner Gilbert. So the police department has a community relations whole arm that are in the community, I think on some regular basis, but I think to find out where they are, and perhaps we just help strengthen what's already going on or suggest some other places that they go. But I think that's part of what we need to find out. So.
Well, this is Chair David. Well, I appreciate that your answer there, Mr. Hollister. I just wanted to make sure that we wasn't duplicating two things at one time. But I do like this topic here, so we'll move forward with that. I just wanted to make sure that we wasn't doing two things and having the same result. That's all. But back to, I think, what Race was asking. I think Mr. McCray, you wanted like a timeline. Is that correct?
Well, we could maybe, if this is something that the commission's interested in, we could maybe just start with this first step of asking the police to send a representative to come address maybe one of their public relations officers, one of their community engagement officers, to come address the commission and say, these are the initiatives we're making. These are, kind of areas where we're already developing. Maybe even these are areas where we'd like to see this further developed, where the commission could then be informed and we could, at that point, kind of develop this conversations further. Right? Because it sounds like something that there's a strong interest in, but that there might also be a need for further information before we can even establish what recommended success indicators or timeline looks like.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
does this jibe with what you were talking about, or since I think this is your idea, right?
Yes, this is exactly what I was suggesting. And also, I did want to let Mr. McCray know that I did also reach out to the deputy chief of police for the city of High Point, who's also in our leadership class, Anthro Gamble. And I did reach out to him to communicate that this was something that I was interested in a while back. And he did agree at some point to meet and to discuss these different areas of opportunity. So I have already made that contact.
Excellent. And we, of course, not surprising at all, Manager Hollis and I both have extensive contacts within the police since they're our colleagues and we work with them. So we could easily ask them to come address the commission.
Okay. So this is Chair Davis again. So with the interest of time, unless there's any more comments or questions about this, I would like to move on to our last item, if we could. Mr. McCray, please.
Sure. So the last item was outreach to the Latinx community, which at this point is kind of a little more vague item. But it was to address specifically, this was brought up by Commissioner Gomez, and I think kind of more or less seconded by Commissioner Manzi and others, that we have a population of 110,000, give or take, in High Point, and roughly 10% of that population identifies as Hispanic or Latino. So that could be, it's a significant group that the city could do more to interface with and address their needs, or even just hear their needs, is kind of what I was hearing. I wasn't sure if there was a specific request from the commission yet, but again, this could be a starting place for a broader thing. We have definite expertise on the commission to address whatever might come up. So maybe in terms of just a recommended timeline or recommended success indicators, if Commissioner Gomez or Commissioner Manzi wanted to elaborate on some ideas, or if nothing else, we could again establish kind of an ad hoc subcommittee to have some brainstorming sessions specifically on this issue.
Before, thank you, Race. I think this is Teron Hollis. I think one of the things that we see, and this is to Commissioner Manzi and Commissioner Gomez, on our end, when we know we're doing great work, we're doing campaigns, we're sending information out, we're doing lots of things from an outreach standpoint. We always get people that come in and they represent one of the holes in the net or one of the spaces where we didn't reach. And so even though we're busy about the work, there's always perspectives or there's opportunities to reach people that we haven't. So I think with the all the great work that the Latino Family Center is doing, I think you both represent what some of the challenges are. Even though there's work being done, what else can be done, in what way, and who else can be at the table that hasn't been at the table historically, So I think this does present some opportunities. One, for education. Hey, I didn't know this was going on. And then two, for education on the other end of, oh, I had no idea. Your perspective allows us to tweak, change, or improve some things. So I think it's a good starting point. And there could be other people that need to be at the table, is my point, even beyond the expertise that we have here on the commission from a perspective standpoint. I just wanted to mention that.
Well, I think that what Commissioner Manzi said and what they're doing is exactly what I was talking about that is needed. And to her point that it's just her and one other person, then I think that's where the commission would come in, giving her the manpower, giving her the resources, maybe getting people together to volunteer to help her. Again, going back to not reinventing the wheel. If she's already started this process and what she needs is manpower, then maybe, myself, maybe there's other people on the commission that can help that, City of High Point has resources that an individual person does not, or a private entity like the YWCA, maybe they don't have the resources that a city does, then maybe that's what she needs in order to grow what she's doing, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
And I'll just add in quickly because of interest of time as well. This and thank you, Jerron, for your feedback and encouragement as well. I would like to, I don't want to table it, but yes, it's like, I mean, I would like to, obviously whoever wants to be part of this ad hoc group, or kind of because we have 3 different ones. I think it's wise to kind of break it up into groups, and then really sit down and so that we can, because I can talk for hours and we don't have the time today. So, and then being able to, as a group committee, and then bring it up to the commission to say okay, here are the top 3, what do we want to or top 2, or, this is what, we should do or whatever. But, there are things in my head. It's prioritizing one. So if for this one, if for the recommended timeline, it might be that from here until the next meeting, we kind of come up with, hey, here are the pressing issues that we would like to address or help or have support in or whatnot. And I don't know if anyone else has any, feedback on this. I'm more than willing. I'm a big believer that it takes a village.
Yeah, so as I'm kind of writing down here, this first step could be just meet with an ad hoc subcommittee to brainstorm potential ways to fulfill this goal. This is more of a topic area and develop a concrete goal. I think that in particular, Commissioner Manzi, you've got I heard you say earlier, there are a million things that we could do, and I just need to sit down and sift through them to figure out which would be like the one thing that the commission could most help you with. So maybe it sounds like an ad hoc committee could very quickly develop this and bring back a recommendation for the actual initiative would maybe be the most useful way to spend the time. And that at that point, the group as a whole, the commission as a whole could say, yes, we agree that that's something we want to work on, and could kind of further develop this timeline and success indicators at that point. Does that sound appropriate?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Commissioner.
I have very top 3 ideas already, but I'd rather have it.
Yes. Excuse me, Commissioner Hood, is your hand still up from previous, or is that a new hand raised?
No, it's still up. My apologies. I don't know how to take it down.
Sorry.
I took it down. My apologies.
So, Mr. Chair, if we could maybe entertain some volunteers for this ad hoc group.
That's what I was getting ready. Yeah, I was going to ask. The floor is open, as Mr. Hollis was saying. Is there anyone that would like to participate and volunteer on this particular item? Please come forward now.
You can take me off of the youth council and put me on this one.
Okay. Anyone else? So let's see, Ms. Gomez, I believe.
Commissioner Gomez also volunteered for this initiative as well.
So we have Commissioner Gomez, Commissioner Gilbert. Anyone else? Was Commissioner Manzi? Is she? Are you on this?
Yeah, she.
Oh yeah. I'm like, it's a given. I didn't say anything because I'm like, mine is a given. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have Commissioner Manzi, Gilbert, and Gomez, correct? Is that correct, Mr. McCray?
That's correct.
Okay. Let me do this, please, because I didn't mean to skip it. I'm gonna go back to the law enforcement, what Mr. Hood was talking about. Did I ask? Because I don't think I asked anyone wanted to volunteer for that, or do we need an AHOC for that? Do you think we need that, Mr. Director? Do you think we need one?
I think of all the ones that we've talked about, I think you could have an ad hoc for that. I think a lot of that will be informed after that police meeting. So I think you've got flexibility. I don't think it helps you or hurts you to put it in place now, but you could. But I think that group and the group collectively will really benefit from the information they receive from police. But I don't think we established an ad hoc for that group yet.
I was just wondering, yes, with that, I was thinking, did we need to add one at this particular time, or do we need to get things rolling and then add it?
I'm not sure we'll need an ad hoc committee, Chair Davis. The idea is that the staff will invite a representative from the police department to address the commission. And at that point, it might be more appropriate to develop an ad hoc committee, depending on what they have, because that may shape who is interested and what the commission would be best served doing.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I didn't leave anything out or anyone out. I didn't want to make sure I was being fair to everyone. Okay. Anything else? Mr. McCray, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. What is our next? I don't lost my place. So someone, You might have to help me here, Mr. Drake.
I can help you out. So we
Uh,
are at a, I think we're basically wrapping up this agenda item. So let me just summarize that we have establishing a human relations youth council. There will be an ad hoc committee meeting, and we'll kind of send out those who are interested, send out an email and try to help as staff coordinate that. And that will be able to report back at a future meeting, either our February or our March meeting, to kind of talk about what they've determined in terms of developing that as an initiative. At also with our second initiative, bridging the gap between community and law enforcement, staff will invite a representative from the police department to come talk to us. And that can hopefully happen as soon as February, but we'll keep you informed of that. And then the third item, much like the first, is outreach to the Latinx community. It will be a subcommittee. That one, I know who's on it, Commissioner Gilbert, Commissioner Gomez, and Commissioner Manzi. And that will be, we'll kind of, again, facilitate a conversation between the three of you where you can have some time to work together to develop something and return to the subcommittee or return to the full commission at a future date. And that will likely be, again, probably February or March, but we can, since that's a bit broader topic, we'll allow you all the flexibility to make that happen as is most appropriate for you. So that seems like if I were to kind of establish where we are, that seems to have completed our agenda item there, which was 2022 work plan topic review and development. So I think that we've completed that. The next thing would be a subcommittee discussion, but I might suggest, Mr. Chair, that we break for 5 minutes since we've been going for a little over 2 hours. Folks might need to grab a glass of water or something like that.
That would be great. So we will do that. We'll take a 5-minute break. And what time is it? What time is it exactly?
It is currently 7:43, so we could meet back at 7:48.
Okay. So we're going to adjourn for 5 minutes and we adjourn at 7:48. Thank you.
Oh, shoot.
I think people are rolling back in, Mr. Commissioner or Chair Davis, but we're still being joined by a few. So give us just 1 second.
Oh, yes, okay.
Oh, hey, Stacy, I didn't even see you earlier.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Getting ready for this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, if you haven't been to the grocery store, it is a crazy place.
I know it is. I went a little earlier this week and picked up a couple of things, so it'll be all right.
We were there today. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. I think everybody in High Point was at the grocery store.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, we might have everyone back. I've seen everyone except for Commissioner Hood, who also had his camera off earlier, just briefly. So he may be back as well. I don't know.
Okay, we're going to call this meeting back to order. It is, what time is it, Mr. McCray?
It's 7:50.
At 7:50, we're going to readjourn this meeting for the HRC back to order. Mr. McCray, I would like to start off and open the floor to you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining us back again. It will be hopefully a much shorter second half, and because we only have two leftover items, and they're much, I think, cleaner than the work plan topic review in terms of the amount of work we need to do. So the first is we're going to kind of conclude our discussion of subcommittees. Back in December, I gave a presentation about us establishing the subcommittees that would be the permanent standing committees for this group. So this is different than the ad hoc subcommittees like we just did with individual initiatives where we just say we're going to have a small group meet for a month or two. This is a standing committee of a group that until we change it would be meeting regularly, bringing items to the commission. I presented a number of possible ways to think about that and potential ideas of what that might look like. And the intention was that at this meeting, the commission would then vote for which committees they would like to establish as standing committees, if any. Mr. Chair, that kind of sums it up, and you can move through the motion.
Let me, right now we have two committees, subcommittees, interfaith and international, correct? And I think one of the things we really need to decide and recognize is, are they being effective, and are they needed right now, or do we need to add something else? Are you in agreement with that, Mr. McCray?
That can be a fine place. We have already covered some of that ground in previous meetings, but we can start however you'd like.
Do anyone, so I think you have outlined some other things that you would like to, as other options, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. What was it? Women, LGBTQ, disability, and what was the other? Go
Issue
ahead.
driven.
I had at the December meeting, I suggested that subcommittees typically fall into two groups. One would be an affinity group and one would be an issue-driven group. So an affinity group would be around a kind of specific identity, such as women or LGBTQ or disability concerns. Whereas a issue-driven group would be looking at a specific topic, such as housing security, food insecurity, or domestic violence. Those aren't necessarily the proposed topics. I mentioned, for example, another one would be social justice as a potential larger group. But those are just ideas of like kind of how to approach it.
Well, let me ask this. Did we decide whether we was gonna keep the interfaith and international, or we was going to move on with a new subcommittee? Did we ever decide that?
That's the decision that's before you today.
Okay, that is before us today. Okay, thank you. I personally really would like to see the interfaith. I would like to see the interfaith for us being a international city. Well, that's not interfaith, that's international. Excuse me, the interfaith, because of so many different religions. But I'm very open for these other things. Well, anyway, I would like to open the floor for with our commissioners to see what their ideas and what their thoughts are. Anyone else have a comment? Well, let me ask you this, Mr. McCray. With the international, how has it been? We haven't used that at all this year. How would that be? How would that look right now with COVID? And
none of the subcommittees have been meeting at all during COVID. The commission made a decision at the beginning of COVID, so this is going on about 2 years, to continue to meet virtually for the full commission, but that to minimize the risk for members of the community by eliminating temporarily subcommittees. So they still exist, they just have not been meeting in any regularity. I think that may continue to be true with the rise of the Omicron variant. I think the hope, though, would be that tonight you would establish what the committee should look like going forward, so that staff and the commission would both have the flexibility once it's easier to maneuver within kind of and manage those concerns about COVID, that they would be able to immediately kind of help form these subcommittees. Whereas if we continue to parlay this decision to a later date, we'll have to return to the commission to make that decision.
This is Commissioner Mansi. A quick question. I know I wasn't on the last one, and I know this has been a topic that we've been discussing for months. Because we're doing, we're trying to focus our focus areas or whatnot, can we tie the committees to our projects? So like if we're doing the bridging the gap with, community and law enforcement, would that be something like now you have like a social justice committee or something to that effect? Or is this separate what we're focusing on, is that separate from the subcommittees? Is there a way to tie the two, that way we're not like together?
Well, the idea on the committees, the subcommittees have been standing committees that are in place from year to year. So we would discourage just setting up the subcommittees tied to what the current 6-month work plan is. Rather, so international, for example, if that were a standing subcommittee, then that would be something that we had that would be a logical place for the discussion we were having about outreach to our Latinx community. Right. So the idea with this is that and this is a great time for questions. Now, that's a great one. I'm sure there's some others. So the idea here is that we talk about collectively what year-to-year standing committees would we like for the commission to have, and how that, and then if we do have work plan items that come up in the future, they would either fall in those categories or we have to find another way to address them. So these standing committees are not functions of the work group. They're independent of the work plan items. They might happen to fit, but we're kind of looking at what overall objectives, based on what the commission thinks that it should be doing, would fit best for these standing committees. Commissioner Gilbert, I think, had a question.
Okay, so I mean, that was my question, Giselle. So ultimately, the standing committees ought to be the umbrella where some of these work items come out of. But they just haven't been functioning, or I mean, so if that's the case, then it looks like to me there needs to be a social justice component, and that would be 3. And then you'd have umbrella standing committees for the work that we're doing.
So I think an important component of this is to remember that, like, you can have as many subcommittees as you want, while also recognizing that this is that there will at least need to be one commissioner, if not more, who sits on that subcommittee and meets there. So when you say 3, you're now talking about 3 separate meetings beyond our regular monthly meeting, right, that would need to be attended by 1 or more commissioners. I think that your comment, Commissioner Gilbert, about do these subcommittees bring work plan items, like kind of what's the relationship between the work plan items and the subcommittees, is a good one. It's a little more complex than what you're saying. It can be a driver of the things. So for example, when you choose to have an international subcommittee, you're meeting with them to ask them about their concerns. You're meeting with them, so they could have been the subcommittee that brought, I think you need greater outreach to the Latinx community. It wouldn't necessarily follow that we as the commission decided that we need greater outreach to the Latinx community, therefore we need an international subcommittee. That it doesn't go that way. It only is a one-way street.
To us. Okay.
That doesn't mean that if it was already existing, you couldn't have a dialogue back and forth where you move something to a subcommittee, and then instead of the ad hoc committee, we instead say, let's table this to the international subcommittee to have this discussion about how to develop this work plan item. That can absolutely happen, but it's not necessarily that you only get your work plan items from the subcommittees either. You can move items to the subcommittee. You can also choose to accept items from the subcommittee, but you would rarely say, we're going to develop an item just because this subcommittee exists and they haven't said anything about it, but we're going to develop and send it to them. That would be unlikely to happen.
Well, I mean, that just seems like such a long kind of process. I mean, I don't know that you'd ever get anything done. I mean, if you've got I don't know. I mean, I just don't know their function. And it's because they haven't functioned since I've been on it. So
Commissioner Gilbert, if I may, the subcommittees have been around for years. Those standing
the same ones, the same 2.
They have been around. Yeah, they've been around for years. And typically, there were regular meetings of those, and
Okay.
those subcommittees historically have been the drivers of much of the work that we do. Historically, that's the way it's been, but that's because they were active and there were ideas and there were discussions, and so those things came. But just like Manager McCray said, if we have something that comes to us that, you know, if Commissioner Gomez had come with that idea and she wasn't a commissioner and it came to the commission, because of the nature of the topic, it would have been assigned to the international committee because of the nature of what it was.
Right.
What we're talking about now is for not just for the commission, but you know, worldwide, things are different than they were 10 years ago. There are different things that are coming to the front, the forefront of issues and topics, and so this will be the time for the commission to discuss what those things should be. It's important to note that the way that those committees met in the past is probably not the way they'll be meeting in the near future. I mean, we're not doing more in-person meetings. You know,
Yeah.
here we are, right? So the fact that a group has not gotten together partly is a function of workload, ideas. Some of it's COVID, some of it's commission transition, but the history is important to understand where they came from. But tonight we want to talk about the present and the future, and we want to have standing committees that are useful. We want to have standing committees that are used, that are the proving grounds for ideas that come to the commission, and have heavy involvement and input from people in the community who are not necessarily, or who, by definition of the standing committees, aren't commissioners. So you'd have people from the community there. So if we can establish collectively as a commission what you think those standing committees should be, that would be a good start. And then we can worry about how setting up the meeting, how we delegate certain things, how we select people, volunteers that want to be on them. Those things come, but it all starts with something that, just like the work plan items, things that you're interested in, things that you're passionate about, and things that we can have a chair and a vice chair of commissioners. So Race is right. You can have as many as you want, but I don't think it's practical to go any more than 2 or 3.
Okay, so if we did away with these two, who would be really upset?
That's one way to look at it.
I mean, where are they? Where is the energy for them? I mean, is it on this group?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe I should clarify to your earlier comment, Commissioner Gilbert, you said it sounds like that is inefficient or takes a lot of time or whatever it is. At the end of the day, the buck stops with the commission. There would never be a subcommittee taking an action item where they develop the topic, they approve the topic, they move on with the topic. It's more like they are actually designed for efficiency, that you say, hey, we need a new work plan item. And they say, well, we've been kicking this around idea. Or, we need someone to get together and brainstorm for 2 hours and we don't want all 10 commissioners on the line. So we're going to have them do it in their regular meeting. It's more designed to help facilitate your next meeting, what work happens, so that you don't have to do everything yourselves.
So to your original question, Commissioner Gilbert, maybe if we take the stance of what are the needs in 2022 for the City of High Point Human Relations Commission as it plays out in a standing committee. I think where there's leadership, you usually have followership. So I think the commission can do a really good job at establishing where people in the community that want to be active in human relations topics, where they can get that. So I think that's a good starting point for the group to discuss. Does anybody have, maybe people who don't remember or weren't in the last meeting, does anybody have any questions about the standing committees, about how they work, about why they are or why they aren't? Any questions regarding that?
I do.
Okay.
I'm interested in the work of the interfaith committee. Were they, and I don't know, I'm just asking, was it just a group of different denominations, religions that come together? I'm not sure.
Yes. And the interfaith, I've been working with the Human Relations Commission, I think 8 years now, and the work of interfaith, international, those existed years before I got here. So there have been a number of things. There have been forums that the Interfaith Committee did about understanding faith. Since I've been here, we had the Ramadan celebration that came out of Interfaith. Interfaith was probably some of our most well-attended events came out of Interfaith. The Ramadan dinner that we did was in response at the time to a high anti-Islamic sentiment that was going through communities in the country, and it was an educational event where people got to see that their neighbors, their brothers and sisters who happen to be of the Islamic faith have kids in the same schools or in line getting their milk and bread just like we are, and it was an understanding. But those kinds of things came out of interfaith. So again, but we had a commission that was there were members on the commission at that time that was a really big priority, and so the standing committees are a function of the commission. And if you join the commission and they said the commission has these 3 subcommittees, that helps you determine, okay, well, do I want to be a part of that? So what you're doing is you're not only establishing the now, but you're shaping what the Human Relations Commission's scope and work will be after you rotate off for next people to come in. But you're trying to frame that in a context of what's important in the community now, where those needs are, and how the commission fits into that. So great question. I don't know if I answered yours, but it was a good question.
You did. I mean, and just like you said, things have changed so much. And this just is my personal opinion. I think it's important to have an interfaith commission just because of all the division and everything that has happened over the past several years, that people need to find a way to coexist. You may be different, but still coexist and get along.
I agree.
Okay, and this is Chair Davis. Correct me, Mr. Hollins, if I'm wrong. Didn't National Day of Prayer come under the interfaith also?
Well, the National Day of Prayer was already established, of course, outside of the National Day of Prayer was bigger than High Point, but yes, the event, the High Point's observance of the event and that setup came through interfaith.
And I'll just add the interfaith subcommittee was very effective at bringing folks here, but just like Mr. Hollis said, bringing events and establishing programs. If you would have had a different subcommittee with equally passionate members, they would have done equally awesome events in equally different areas. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're establishing a sense what your passions are. If you're saying, yes, I would want to be on this, interfaith subcommittee. I would want our action items on our work plan to be driven by interfaith concerns. I would want these kind of things. Then that's the correct subcommittee. If, on the other hand, you think this is a great subcommittee, but I wouldn't want anything to do with it.
Well, to maybe refine that a little bit more, I think the work plan is about you. The standing committees are not just about you. So if you have no passion, for example, with international, High Point is a resettlement community, and to your earlier question about there are many people in this community that have a connection from the international standpoint, with us being World Relief, YWCA, you name it, that would probably get some attention. Same thing with interfaith. There are people that have been passionate and active. So I think the difficult thing here is determining what the Human Relations Commission, under the context of what we've been talking about, what should we be doing based on our community, based on what's going on in 2022, and then how do you fit into that? But I wouldn't say if so, for example, if there was no one on the commission that had any interest in our international community, in interfaith, and in social justice, and we said, so we're not interested in those, so we don't need them. You know, we want to have a cultural arts and restaurant standing committee. That might be what you want, but does that serve the purpose of the commission? So the commission in this case, you're crafting, maybe preserving or maybe changing what people are going to be talking about 10 years from now, are the committees, and people are asking, well, why do we have those? And then somebody can explain why. So maybe it's a good place to start to see if there's something we want to add or something we want to take away that has already been that has been in place. And if there are any other questions, we can answer those so we can get to that and move along for the sake of time.
Excuse me, this is Chair. I think Commissioner Manzi had put a question in the chat. Would you like to go ahead and ask that question, Commissioner Manzi?
Yeah, I just posed a question, is it possible to start with one subcommittee or committee? And then, as we roll over the year, if we need to add a second, go ahead and add that second, and like maybe start with one where we're intentional and the efforts are there and the interest is there, and then adding a second, or do we need to add 2, 3, whatever the number is, like at the beginning of the year?
As a point of process in the ordinance and in our bylaws, the establishment of your ad hoc committees is completely under the purview of this group. The standing committees, if they're going to be removed or if they're going to be added, have to be approved by council. So the commission will go to council and say, the 2022 Hyper Human Relations Commission would like to, we suggest that we have these new standing committees. That will be approved by council, because that would change in the ordinance, in the bylaws, and maybe even the ordinance. I'll do some research on that to see what those changes would look like. So right now we have an interfaith committee, the standing committee. We have an international subcommittee, and we have an executive subcommittee, but that's more administrative than kind of day to day. So if we decided, hey, though we're going away from those, the action of the commission would be to ask council to remove those committees, and then these are the ones that we want to add. So you can do one, but if you're saying we're just going to have one, you're also making a recommendation to take away 1 or 2 in order to, so you just have that one. Just clarifying process there.
I mean, is there anything wrong to just keep the status quo?
That's why we're here.
I mean, I'm fine if we just keep whatever we have, the 2, or if anyone has, if we want to switch one or both. It seems like we've been talking about this for months, and we just need to just make a decision on whether we keep the status quo or just do 1, 2. And if we do 2, or, I just think we need to come to a consensus tonight, because it's going to be, we've been doing this for 3 months.
Hey, excuse me, Commissioner Hood has his hand up. Hold on. Go ahead, Commissioner Hood. Go ahead.
I definitely think it's important for us to also go ahead and start a social justice committee, because us being a human relations commissions, that falls within the guidelines of what we're here for.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask Mr. McCrae something. This is Chair Davis. You had outlined an affinity-driven group and also issue-driven group, and you had some other things outlined what it would look like, what it could look like. With these 2 subcommittees we have now, could any of these things fall up under that? Could that be up under those umbrellas? Like the affinity-driven group, like you have the women, the LGBTQ, and disability. could that fall up under one of the subcommittee groups that we have now?
Well, it's not, it's neither a good nor a bad thing to be affinity driven versus issue driven. That's just like a way of thinking. So international is an affinity group because it's based on the identity of the people in, who are facing these kind of concerns. Interfaith could probably be considered either one, but is most likely also an affinity group. So it's not, it's neither good nor bad. They both are. So it's more just, I was giving those categories as a means of helping you think through potential subcommittee ideas.
Right. So we still could address some of these issues that if they came up with what I'm asking, could we still address some of the issues if they came up under one of the two that we already have established? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, we could address any issue that comes up, whether there's a standing committee with it or not. But the standing committees are going to be a reflection of the type of work that the commission does. So if we have an interfaith and we have an international standing committee, and we do, then what we're saying is that we're going to do work connected to interfaith and international matters in the community. But I think as a point of order, I don't think he made it as a motion. But I think what's kind of hanging on the floor now, I think Commissioner Hood had a question about adding a social justice committee to Commissioner Manzi's point. The only way we're going to get past this issue is to make a decision on it. So I think Commissioner Hood is talking about adding a social justice committee. So I think it'll be most productive and effective for us to talk about that and get through that point. And then that might be your stopping point, Commissioner Manzi, of where we say, do we have enough or do we need to see what that looks like? But I think the Social Justice Committee is something that we need to talk about now and either suggest it, move on from it, or what have you, because that's come up for a few months now. Commissioner Gilbert, it looks like you had your hand up.
I mean, I would be for adding a social justice because it would encompass the housing stuff we've talked about and worked on. If we're going to do the police, I mean, it seems that our work revolves more around social justice than it does these two, although I know they are longstanding. I just think that would be a third one that we would broaden our perspective and it would cover a lot of what we're doing.
So to move this along, because this can be a part of the discussion. So if Commissioner Hood could make a motion about the addition of the social justice, and if it's seconded, we'll follow Robert's rules, and then when it gets to the point of discussion, we want to have some discussion on it, then that could take us to a vote and make a move along that way.
Before this, Chair Dave, before we go to that, are we also talking about keeping the other two and just adding the social justice? Am I correct for everyone? Clarity.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. By default, unless we take them away, they're there. So they're already there. If we do nothing today, they'll still be there.
Okay.
It would be a separate motion to remove them, in other words.
Okay. So can we get a motion then to add the social justice? Do I have a motion?
I motion to add the Social Justice Committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Who is that?
Gilbert.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor and we have a second. Can we take a vote?
No. Well, now I think we have discussion. Who's my Robert's Rules expert? Race.
That's correct.
Now, once you have a second, then you can have discussion.
Yeah, so we've got a second, which means that now we're specifically limiting our discussion to the topic of the motion. So we're not going to talk about whether or not we're removing the other ones unless someone were to make an alternate motion. You're going to talk about should we or should we not add a social justice committee, and when discussion is over, you would take a vote.
I'm opening the floor for discussion. I'd like to start off. I think it would be a great idea. I like the idea of a social justice because of the broadness of what could fall up under it, and yeah, I think it would be good for the community, uh, and for people to bring, if they have issues, maybe to bring them forward, to have a place to bring it, and open a dialogue for talk also between our law enforcement agencies. Anyone else? Commissioner Hood, are you there?
What's the
I
purpose of the
agree.
social justice committee or the social justice group? What's the purpose? What does it do?
I'm sorry,
Gomez, sorry.
yeah, I'm looking for you on the, okay.
I was eating, so I just kind of turned off the
No,
screen for a minute.
I was like, where's that voice coming from? No, thank you.
No, I was
I see you now. So the discussion here is about whether the commission would move to have a social justice standing committee. Social justice, I think, has been outlined a little bit, encompasses a lot of areas. It's a lot of ways you can talk about it, but it encompasses a lot of areas where the typically human relations commissions deal with historically marginalized, historically underrepresented, or historically overlooked groups. So the idea of social justice, and there's probably somebody listening that probably has a degree on this, just on social justice, but the idea of social justice is to attempt to look at things in a way that considers those who historically have not been considered. Programs, policies, initiatives, and what we've seen in recent years is a lot of times that's overlapped with programs, government programs that affect people. We've seen it with police. We've seen it with so that's where, when you talk about social justice, that's the topic. The particular discussion now is reasons for supporting it or not supporting it before the vote.
Okay.
Good job. Yeah. I mean, I think it would cover things that are not covered in the other two standing committees. Right. So
So just as an example, I'll use something that's difficult and try to make an example of it. So interfaith, let's say we had a very large Hindu population in the city, and we found that our Hindu population was on the wrong end of service delivery, that our Hindu population was being mistreated in a way that was well documented. Although that is a faith group, the social justice component of it would look at, how do we find ways to quote unquote right this wrong, or come up with ideas on making things better for this particularly impacted group. So you could have some overlap of different topics, but social justice deals specifically with that area. And I'm not doing the definition justice. Google is a much better researcher than I am, but we kind of work in it. That's the end of it that we see here at the city.
I can tell you it's often concerned with kind of how certain rights and opportunities are distributed among people in a society. So, and is that distribution just? And so it's often trying to, so that's where you get the word social justice, because it's like the distribution of this justice within a society. So that could be everything from economic opportunities to human rights. Is a specific group not being treated in the same way that another group is being treated? Is a certain group not getting the same opportunities of, buying houses or getting jobs in another group? So it's kind of concerned with that on the societal level.
So we had a few hands. I don't know if Commissioner Hood. Or Commissioner
no,
Gilbert.
mine's down.
Okay. So there's still the discussion is still on that? Is there any other discussion?
I had my hand raised, but I fully do agree with what Ray said, which is why I put my hand down. I feel like social justice falls within communities. It covers communities such as the LGBTQ community. That's a community. Where would we place that without a social justice committee?
Here's the Google definition. You want the Google definition?
I knew it.
Justice in terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. Individuality gives way to the struggle for social justice. So it covers things separate from international and interfaith.
Do we have any more discussion? Do we have any more comments?
All right, maybe time to call the question, Mr. Chair.
So say again, please.
Call for the question. Call for the vote.
I saw. So if there's any more discussion, I would like to call for a vote on adding social justice to our subcommittee. Can I get a roll call, please? Can I get a roll call, Ms. Taylor?
Yes, Chair Davis, thank you. If you can answer yay or nay. Chair Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McGregor,
Yes.
Commissioner Manzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Barker
She's off.
is absent for the vote. Commissioner Gomez,
Mine's gonna be unpopular, but I think we should do human justice. I'm gonna say nay.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Yes.
Okay, the vote passes by a vote of 6-1. Chair Davis, I hand it back over to you.
Okay. I thank everyone for that. So we will be adding social justice to our subcommittee.
Well, actually, what we'll do is the commission will request that to the city council that subcommittee be added as a standing committee for the Human Relations Commission. That's the process. So now the commission has agreed that they want to have it, and now council would have to approve it, much like a work plan. This is what the commission is recommending, and then council will, if they have any questions, but this will be a vote for the council.
So let me ask you this: do we wait until council approval this adding of this before we ask who would like to be on that subcommittee, or do we go ahead now and get ask for members to be on it?
I would wait on this, and then I think staff, we will work in the background to see when it can be added for council consideration, and then at that time, if the council approves it, then I think it will be advisable to move forward with establishing a chair up for it, what have you. But let's wait for the council to give it a thumbs up before we do any additional planning. But this is an important step if we want to collectively as a group say to add that standing committee. But we'll take it from here, I guess is what I'm saying.
So,
yeah.
So when it's presented, it needs like fully descriptions and I mean, it needs to be fully fleshed out for the council, or do we just present a new committee?
What staff will do is staff will provide a summary. It will be an agenda item, and in that agenda item, I can promise you it'll be a little bit more articulate than my explanation, and we'll get that and we'll have that in front of council. We just have to figure out when we have to get it on on the agenda. It could be something that I don't want to speak too soon, but it could be something that we present at the same time or on the same day that we do the fair housing ordinance. Well, we'll work that out from staff, but we could get questions from council about what it is and what we're changing, and staff will be there. And of course, at the meeting, when it's discussed, we'll let the commission know. So those of you that would like to be in attendance could be there as well.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. McCray, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. First, before I do that, are there any other discussions? Or anyone else have any comments? Okay, Mr. McCray, anything else you would like to add or say?
I think the real question would just be if there are any other motions related to adjusting the subcommittees that you all have. Seeing none, I think we can just leave that issue as it is, and we will present it as we are adding, in addition to the 2 subcommittees we have, we are adding a 3rd subcommittee, and that's what we'll present to council, which closes that item. So we would then be moving on to our last item of the night, which is any additional items and considerations. I know from staff perspective, we don't have any really much here. We just have 2 upcoming items that you're already kind of aware of. The first is something we mentioned before, which is the point in time count, which is the day that we count all of our homeless populations. A number of people have volunteered, and so I'm only here to mention that if you as a commissioner have volunteered to participate in that, you should have already gotten an email saying when the trainings are. If you have not gotten that email, please reach out to me and I will make sure to connect you. So that's the first item. And then the second item is we also mentioned at our last meeting, and we've done through email, that there will be a humanitarian of the year that's been nominated by the commission members. And we as staff made a decision on that, and that person will be honored. We have not made that announcement yet, so you'll get that announcement soon. And also that person will be participating in the Martin Luther King Day Parade, which, if you had not heard, was postponed because of weather from this weekend to next weekend. So since we actively participate in that event, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. And then the last thing that I just also remembered is the VITA services. If you know anyone who needs assistance with tax preparation and would maybe qualify for that assistance because of their income status, that is a free service offered by the city. We can gladly help you get more information about that just by calling the Human Relations Office if you know someone. I know Commissioner Manzi has been working with offering that service a little bit through her work, and it's also often offered at the library every week up until April 15th. So just wanted to make sure you all are aware that you could share that message if need be. And I think that's all the additional items and concerns that I had.
I have a question. I know in the past, before during the Martin Luther King March, the HRC had participated. I was wondering, will we be participating this year or not? Are they asking us to participate this year or not? Do you know?
You first, Rice.
I was gonna say, we are participating for one thing in I will be driving the humanitarian of the year in that parade, so that person can receive accolades and attention. And in that sense, yes. And then also our city manager is going to be participating as well.
What I was asking, like, I was wondering, with the commissioners, like, I remember, correct, help me out, Mr. Hollis. I remember, I think our last one that we were in, the commissioner was marching in the parade. Will we be doing, they asked us to do that this year, or is it just that Mr. McCray was driving the humanitarian award, a winner, or the rest of us, are they asking us to be in it as in to march or not? That's what I would want to know.
I think this is one of those years where things have been kind of hectic, and I think they pulled this together. The information that we've pulled together on this has been very, very recent. So I'm not aware of. There are some people. This is actually the Carl Chavis Y is actually the sort of the hosting group here. I think we were kind of scrambling to make sure, because we thought it was going to be this weekend, of course, before they canceled it. So I'm not aware of any additional functions or invites. Yes, in the past, there have been with some advance notice. I didn't even know whether we were going to have with everything with COVID. We didn't even know if we were going to have the parade at all. But it turns out we are. Now weather is pushed it to another week. But in the past, when we had planned this we had a lot more lead time. We've done things like a float. We've had things in that regard. So I'm not aware between now and the next weekend that there've been any invites. Of course, as High Pointers, you can attend the parade. We can have some conversations and see if there's something that we missed, but I'm not aware of particular in this one, because again, it's not the City of High Point's parade. It's happening in the City of High Point, but it's not our organization's event. So we'll ask some questions, Mr. Chair, and if there's any additional information, we'll share that with you. But I'm not aware of any for this year. I'm not aware of any other invites that have happened specifically for the commission.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to be clear on that. I knew I hadn't heard anything or had any information of it, but I just wanted to make sure it was going to be different from the past. Okay. Is there any other items or consideration that anyone else has that you'd like to talk about or speak of?
Yeah, just to say that thank you all for taking extra hours to get through this agenda. We appreciate the sacrifice each and every one of you have made to try to make this commission as positive and as productive as possible. I also want to do a shout out to Mr. Ryan Ferguson. He's the technical wizard in the background that's made this meeting possible. So thank you, Ryan, wherever you are. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I also like to thank everyone for their time. I like to thank staff, Mr. Hollister and Mr. McCray, and I tell you, and of course, Miss Taylor. She's I really do appreciate all the work you do. She did some work for me, and I lost it. Then I tried to copy it with my own self. Trust me, I could not do secretary work. So I really do appreciate it. If there's nothing else, I would like to get a motion to adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn the meeting.
Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Okay.
We all seconded.
Let's go.
Okay. Again, thank y'all. Everyone I know it's a little bit long tonight, but we do appreciate that. And with that being said, we have a motion to adjourn, and we have a second. Ms. Taylor, can we get a roll call for that, please? Or do we need a roll call? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Chair Davis,
Yes.
Vice Chair McGregor,
Yes.
Commissioner Hood, Commissioner Manzi.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Yes,
Meeting is adjourned. Have a great day.
thanks.
Good night.
Evening.
Good night,
Have a
everyone.
good night.
Everyone.